Melania Trump is reportedly set to voice strong support for reproductive rights, writing in her new memoir that a woman's fundamental right of individual liberty grants her the authority to terminate her pregnancy if she wishes. In a copy of Melania obtained by The Guardian's Martin Pangoli ahead of its release next Tuesday, the former First Lady writes, restricting a woman's right to choose whether to terminate an unwanted pregnancy is the same as denying her control over her own body. I have carried this belief with me throughout my entire adult life. Why should anyone other than the woman herself have the power to determine what she does with her own body? Asked the former model who married former President Trump in 2005. I have always believed it is critical for people to take care of themselves first, Melania Trump reportedly says in the soon to be released book. A Melania Trump's representative didn't return ITK's request for comments about the Guardian's report. The views expressed by the former First Lady about abortion are in sharp contrast to former President Trump's positions on the hot button issue. The 45th president has said he has no regrets that his hand picked Supreme Court justices overturned Roe v. Wade and ended the constitutional right to an abortion. On Tuesday, Trump said he would veto a federal abortion ban if he were to win a second term in office, emphasizing his position that the question should be decided at the state level. He said in the past that he supports exceptions that allow abortions for blank, the R word, incest in cases where the life of the mother is in jeopardy, and has attacked Democrats for supporting late term abortions. Melania Trump reportedly acknowledges in her book that occasional political disagreements between me and my husband have arisen, but she says, I believe in addressing them privately rather than publicly challenging them. The former First Lady writes that there is no room for negotiation on her core set of principles involving abortion. Many women opt for abortion due to personal medical concerns, she says, according to The Guardian. These situations with significant moral implications weigh heavily on the woman and her family and deserve our empathy. Consider, for example, the complexity inherent in the decision of whether the mother should risk her own life to give birth, Trump 54 says. She writes she is in favor of requiring minors to obtain parental consent before undergoing an abortion, writing, I realize this may not be the case this may not always be possible. Our next generation must be provided with knowledge, security, safety, and solace, and the cultural stigma associated with abortion must be lifted. The slogan "My Body, My Choice" typically associated with women's activists and those who align with the pro-choice side of the debate, she says. But if you really think about it, "My Body, My Choice" applies to both sides: a woman's right to make an independent decision involving her own body, including the right to choose life, personal freedom. This is interesting because the way that a lot of these first families and really just political families in general tend to work is that whoever is the head will always just be seen as representing all of them, and they kind of have to all bow their head and pretend to support every single thing that person says or does. So for her to be pro-choice and be the wife of, I would argue, the most anti-abortion president of the last, just of the era since Roe was a thing, considering his Supreme Court justices overturned it, is quite the turnaround. And she mentions that she doesn't like to publicly disagree with him, but it's my thing is, whether it was Pence or if Vance is elected, or even just as Trump's running mate, like, there's a part of me that understands that when these people are in positions where they have to be subservient to the president or the presidential candidates, even if they disagree with them on something, they're going to bite their tongue, like that, and just not say anything because they don't want to, risk being gotten rid of, or, some kind of friction that can destroy their own career. But it's like, if you're talking about Melania, she's not elected to anything, so it's not like they could force her to resign or fire her or whatever. Like, I don't know. To me it just seems like, of anyone that's in Trump's circle, she probably would have the most impact in terms of providing a different opinion from his advisors, and like the least risk of actually getting in trouble over it. Like, the only other person I can think of that would have as much ability to just say whatever they wanted and not have any reprisal would probably be Ivanka, who's not even involved with her dad's campaigns at this point. But man, this is it's so crazy. You're pro-choice and you are married to the president who ended the constitutional right to have an abortion. You like it's quite the reversal. I have to say there's actually, what's a good way of putting this? There is a running theme where a lot of the I guess first ladies tend to, especially if they're like, married to a Republican president, they tend to be more left leaning than their husband. Just like when Laura Bush came out of office or left office about a year or two afterwards, she made some comments about uh, gay marriage being a thing that people should have, and just it's been a running theme where a lot of these people, when they're not burdened by their husband anymore being an office holder, they tend to be more outspoken in a way that's like pushing towards being left wing, even if it's not reflected in who they endorse. But this is also something that I haven't seen anyone else talking about. I was so confused when this memoir was announced because I said, why would she be writing, a memoir about her time as first lady if her husband is running for another term? And I was thinking, theoretically, if you are wanting to put out a book like this, you're probably going to want to wait a few years if this campaign is successful. And then after this next term is seemingly done, you can then add in however many dozen or so pages you would have to describe your second stint in this role. But I thought about it, I said, maybe it makes sense if, well, one, you're trying to make money as quick as you can, but also it makes sense if she doesn't believe he's going to win. Because, like, I couldn't imagine, again, you write a memoir that contains your time as first lady, but then you still have you still potentially might find yourself back in that role. It's just like, I could totally see Trump in 2029, 28. I mean, hell, even if he doesn't win, it'll be even sooner, like 25, 26, putting out, some 600-700 page memoir of, his life and the presidency and whatnot. But if he is wanting or is of the belief that he's going to get a second term this year, he's not going to start working on that, or at least trying to seriously get that finished during this this cycle. Like, he's going to wait a few years, or rather wait until after, to see whether the term happened, to try to get a book deal and write this thing. So that's why with this book, I feel like part of her candor is in seeing herself as someone who's finished in terms of, because even with this campaign, she has really not been involved with it at all. She's made extremely rare appearances. I think I count on maybe like one hand how many times I've seen her over the past 2 years. Um, so the theory I have is that she believes her husband's going to lose. After this, his relevance, he's still going to be an important part of the Republican Party, whether he wins or not. But if he loses, then they're going to be looking for a new leader, because he said he's not going to run in 2028, which I do believe. And she's trying to make sure she can get as much attention for her, novel or memoir, uh, at a time when it is of the highest significance. God, it's just so wild to think that they just have no connection with this stuff. Like, hey, my husband overturned women's right to have an abortion, but I support it. Oh, I'm not going to disagree with him, publicly, even though I'm actually doing that right now by putting that in this book that is coming out before his campaign is over. Like, I guess, well, then you could make a comment about how a lot of these people, they have supporters who don't actually read. Like when MTG put her book out and nobody bought it. Uh, so I guess that adds up. Where you would say something like this in a book and not in like a sit down interview on Fox News or something, because you know that less people are going to read it as opposed to watching the interview if you have one. But man, it just is so insane to me that you can have something this blatantly like just designed to maximize profit, and people are not putting two and two together. Because the first instinct I had was, if this is something you believe is going to happen, which is Trump getting reelected. Why wouldn't you wait to put out your memoir about your time as first lady until after the second stint of that is over? But you would rush to put this out if you don't believe there will be a second stint. And who knows? Maybe if she writes another memoir, we'll hear about how she supports a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants, and I don't know, a public option in healthcare, or single payer, or just like it's or minimum wage. Hey, let in that case, let the disagreements continue. I'm all for it.